Tonight, in her own words.
I was trying to get away, and then he pushed my dress up.
A former employee of Canadian billionaire Frank Stronach shares her story.
He wasn't my employer anymore. He was my abductor. He was my rapist.
Her agonizing account of an alleged sexual assault. Kamala Harris's first campaign rally with her new running mate.
Welcome the next Vice President of the United States.
And the sharp attacks against his Republican counterpart.
J.D. Vance, I can't wait to debate the guy.
Twin summer storms in the west as BC braces for more flooding and Calgary takes a pounding. Wall Street rebound, whiplash from the market merry-go-round. And an Antarctic enigma.
Colossal iceberg, twice the size of Greater London, is currently stuck.
The gigantic spinning iceberg that has scientists stumped.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. It was a birthday celebration she says sparked decades of torment and anguish by one of Canada's richest men. And tonight, she is sharing her story. We are calling her Lee. We can't tell you her real name because it's protected under court order. A former employee of billionaire auto parts magnate Frank Stronach, she claims Stronach sexually assaulted her, one of 10 women who filed reports with police, leading to 13 sexual misconduct charges against the now 91-year-old business tycoon, whose lawyer declined an interview with CTV News, saying in a statement, "The media is not the forum for which we plead our case. The courtroom is." CTV's Judy Trin starts us off in a warning some of these details might be disturbing for some viewers.
This is you at the time. Tell me about what you see.
I was very happy working at the Boar &
The photo is from 1980. That summer, Lee was hired by Frank Stronach to work on his private farm to care for his racehorses. He had already made millions manufacturing auto parts. His company, Magna International, was growing.
Frank Stronach.
Stronach was also beginning to build his stable of championship thoroughbreds. Lee was 20 years old, about to turn 21. Her co-workers suggested celebrating her birthday in downtown Toronto at Stronach's restaurant, Rooney's.
Just a nice dress that I usually wore to church on Sundays. It wasn't anything outrageous.
She says that before she even looked at the menu, Stronach came to the table and poured champagne for the three women.
I gave in to peer pressure, and I don't think I drank that much champagne, but suddenly I was on the dance floor and he was holding me really, really tight, and I was trying to get away, and then he pushed my dress up, and he tore my pantyhose and just put his fingers inside of me.
Lee says the rest of the night was a blur. She remembers waking up hours later in a room near the Toronto Harbor with no recollection of how she got there.
I was on my back and I looked up and I could see him on top of me, and I could feel him, that he was having sex with me.
Peel Regional Police have charged Stronach with indecent assault and rape in Lee's case. Stronach's lawyer refused a request for an interview and calls the allegations unfounded and unsubstantiated. We intend to save the opportunity to clear Mr. Stronach's name for the courtroom, where he will be provided with a fair and just hearing. Lee says after the incident, Stronach drove her back to her car and acted like nothing happened. She quit her job at the stables the next day and never spoke to him again.
He wasn't my employer anymore. He was my abductor. He was my rapist.
Lee is one of 10 women who have come forward. Stronach faces allegations of sexual offenses dating back to 1977, and police believe there could be more victims. Judy Trin, CTV News, Aurora, Ontario.
A political mystery finally came to an end today. The current vice president revealed her pick for the person she says will be the next one. The two appearing this evening for the first time at a rally in battleground Pennsylvania. CTV's Mike LeCouture reports.
On stage for the first time as running mates, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz packed a university sports arena in Philadelphia. Kicking off a 7-city tour, they laid out the choice before voters.
Our campaign, this campaign, is a fight for the future.
The little-known former high school teacher, coach, and governor giving the Democratic campaign a clear boost.
If Trump gets a chance to return, he's going to pick up exactly where he left off 4 years ago. Only this time, it will be much, much worse.
And Walz laid down this challenge to his opponent, J.D. Vance.
And I got to tell you, I can't wait to debate the guy.
A clear sign the gloves are off in this campaign. Hours earlier, Republicans released a new attack ad targeting Walz.
Having another left-wing extremist as her VP nominee.
The Trump campaign is trying to define the vice presidential candidate before Americans do their own research.
This is a guy who's proposed shipping more manufacturing jobs to China.
That pointed attack likely because of Walz's quip about Trump and Vance, which went viral a week ago.
These guys are just weird. That's who they are. So it isn't much else. Don't give them the power.
Something old and something new.
That folksy feel is what some believe has set Walz apart from the other candidates Harris was considering as her running mate.
He's a happy-go-lucky warrior. He's not exactly somebody who's going to throw slings and arrows.
We share history, trade, investment.
In 2020, Walz reached across the border with that Canada Day message. And back in June, he led a trade mission to Ontario, highlighting the closeness between the two countries. This former U.S. ambassador is calling Harris and Walz perfect for cross-border relations.
She spent early years, her formative years in Montreal growing up. He lives next door to you and looks forward to much trade. Our number one trading partner in Minnesota is Canada. This is the Canada team.
But the road to the White House is a steep one. There are 90 days until the U.S. election, and there are a number of polls showing before today the majority of Americans hadn't even heard of Governor Walz. Omar?
All right, Mike, thanks. Donald Trump and American politicians from both parties may have been potential targets in a foiled murder-for-hire plot.
The defendant met with several individuals in New York who he thought were hitmen, but who were in fact undercover law enforcement officers.
Prosecutors say 46-year-old Asif Merchant, a Pakistani national, spent time in Iran before he flew to the U.S. in April. Police arrested him on July 12th, a day before the shooting at Trump's rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. But the arrest is not believed to be connected to that shooting. Trump has faced Iranian threats since he ordered a strike on a top Iranian general who was killed in 2020. There is hope for order in Bangladesh tonight after a Nobel Peace Prize winner was appointed to lead the country's interim government. Mohammed Yunus takes over after the longest-serving Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, resigned and fled to India following a popular uprising. For weeks, protesters have demanded she step down, outraged because of her crackdown on those who opposed a preferential quota system for government jobs. At least 300 people have been killed. Yunus is currently in Paris for the Olympics, where the coach for a high-profile Canadian sprinter has been booted from the Games the day before a marquee race. The news comes on the same day as a disappointing loss and a golden triumph. Here's CTV's Scott Hurst.
One of Canada's top athletes, Paris 2024 flag bearer Andre de Grasse, is losing a coach as he continues his defense of the 200-meter sprint title.
This is a huge blow to him as well, especially already after not making it to the Olympic final in the 100-meter for the first time in his Olympic career. I think this is kind of the last thing he needs.
The Canadian Olympic Committee has revoked the accreditation of Raina Ryder, coach of the six-time Olympic medal-winning sprinter. The COC in a statement saying, "On Sunday, August 4th, we learned of new information about the appropriateness of Mr. Ryder remaining accredited by Team Canada at the Paris 2024 Games. In discussions with Athletics Canada, it was agreed that Mr. Ryder's accreditation be revoked." The Canadian Olympic Committee did not clarify specifics on the new information. However, according to UK publication The Times, 3 female athletes have accused the sprint coach of sexual and emotional abuse. In a statement provided to CTV News from Ryan Stevens, Ryder's U.S.-based attorney, it says, "It's a bad day for the Olympics when a governing body's fear of bad publicity is prioritized over the athletes. Coach Ryder has no pending sanctions against him by any governing body. The ones who are being hurt in all of this are the athletes suddenly forced to compete without their chosen coach, including one of Canada's finest sprinters. None of the allegations have been tested in court, and Ryder has not been charged with the crime." In the meantime, Canada is golden again. Richmond, BC's Cameron Rogers winning the women's hammer throw competition. This is the second Olympic Games for the 25-year-old reigning world champion, but first time on the Olympic podium. On the hard court, disappointment for the Canada men's basketball program. Back at the Olympics for the first time in 24 years with podium expectations, now out of the Olympics. They lost in the quarterfinals to France. With Canada bumped from the tournament, the host nation will now face Germany in the semifinals. Despite the controversy surrounding his coach, Andre DeGrasse will be back on the track tomorrow in the 200-meter semifinal. He'll be joined by two other Canadian sprinters, Brendan Rodney and Aaron Brown. Omar.
All right, Scott, thank you. The federal Conservatives are demanding answers tonight into how a man with links to a foreign terror group evaded Canada's screening process and became a citizen. Last week, 62-year-old Ahmed Mustafa El-Didi was arrested with his son in Ontario for allegedly plotting a violent attack on Toronto. Both men with reported ties to ISIS have been charged with multiple terrorism-related offenses. Conservative House Leader Andrew Scheer calls it a colossal failure of Canada's national security system and is calling for a parliamentary probe. The remains of a Métis woman from Saskatoon missing for 3 years have been found in a landfill.
Today we have our answers. Mackenzie is home. Thank you, everyone, for that.
Police spent 93 days searching the landfill for 22-year-old Mackenzie Trottier's body. They were led to the site through the cell phone records of a key suspect. Police say the suspect died from a drug overdose in December, so no charges can be laid. And a major concern for an Indigenous community in BC as debris from a large mudslide is threatening their livelihood. The slide and damage from the rushing water could impact critical salmon runs. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson on the surge of a murky river.
Trees and chunks of the riverbank along the Chilcotin are no match for the dangerous current. Everything in the path of the surging water is being washed away, including this small cabin swallowed up.
We continue to urge people to stay away from the Chilcotin River and the Fraser River down to Hope. Slopes and banks may be very unstable. The land may change very quickly, and it remains dangerous.
On the evacuated Wineglass Ranch, 6 kilometers downstream, the surge has done major damage. The family who have owned it for generations say half their fields have been destroyed.
Our land means a great deal to us. We know it so intimately. Every tree, bush, berry bush that we pick from, all the places that we have memories are gone.
The water is moving over top of the blockage created by the massive landslide last week and surging south into the larger Fraser River. Filled with debris, there are numerous evacuation alerts and people in about a dozen homes have been forced out. The chief of a nearby First Nation is concerned about the possible impact on the salmon run, his community's main food source.
There's a big school of fish that are coming up the Fraser River. They haven't gotten to this part yet. Maybe in a couple of weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, they might be showing up. So hopefully the water will be cleared up enough for them to pass through to head up to the spawning grounds.
In Hope, BC, where the Fraser bends west toward Metro Vancouver, the water level was expected to rise by a meter today, and the murky river is filled with chunks of wood.
There is no major flooding expected here in the Lower Mainland, but there is the potential for damage from floating debris. Signs have gone up along the waterfront warning people to keep their distance. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
In Calgary, a major cleanup is underway after a massive hail and rainstorm pelted the city. CTV's Mark Villani on the damage.
Oh no! What? Back for the windows, back.
Calgarians braced for the impact.
I was saying, it felt like this is how the apocalypse is going to come.
Hail rained down on the city Monday night. It caused flash flooding in some northeast neighborhoods. Hundreds of vehicles were damaged in the process, and city crews are doing everything they can to repair power lines. Jason Schoffer described the storm as if his house was hit by bullets from a machine gun.
The siding's all potted. Looked like somebody took a Uzi, went through it. All right, in backyard, you can see the vegetation's toasted.
Others had their windows smashed, fearing for their safety.
Everything was just shattered. Like the sofas were wet, the floor was wet, everything was wet.
The storm surged into Calgary, scattering across the city's northeast with winds gusting up to 100 kilometers per hour. Low atmospheric temperatures aided in the creation of hail all the way up to the size of baseballs.
If it's lower, we get bigger hail because the hail can, stay in that below freezing part of the storm a little bit longer.
Those massive chunks of ice are also destroying local farms. Mohammed Eldaher lost his entire crop. The Syrian refugee says his greenhouse sustained more than $60,000 in damage, destroying 7 years of work in less than an hour.
I never seen before it. It's first time to watching it, how it's heavy and it's strong.
You look at the fava beans, it's completely flattened. The chickpeas, it's like it's broken. It was just going to be ready in 1 week. Everything destroyed.
But all that can be done now is to clean up the aftermath following a storm that's left many wondering how long it will take to rebuild. Mark Villani, CTV News, Calgary.
And south of the border, Tropical Storm Debbie is turning into a slow-motion disaster that has now killed at least 6 people.
We need you to stay home until this passes.
Coastal Georgia and South Carolina have been inundated with a deluge of rain that could bring catastrophic flooding before heading north, where the storm is expected to hit parts of eastern Canada. Coming up, markets rebound after a global sell-off. Plus, all eyes on an iceberg larger than most Canadian cities. Global markets rallied today, but it wasn't enough to recover yesterday's steep losses. And Canada's largest exchange closed down. CTV's Annie Bergeron-Oliver on what the market tumult means for investors.
Wall Street opened higher today, bringing some calm to investors after the market's worst day since 2022.
What we saw yesterday was Christmas comes early. It was blood in the streets, meaning people were being way too overreactive.
Over the past 3 weeks, it's estimated that $6.4 trillion in global wealth has been lost, much of that from U.S. tech stocks that have been riding high.
There have been disappointing financial results from major tech firms such as Amazon, Alphabet, and Intel, which has led to significant share sell-offs in the market.
While that contributed to the decline, the major sell-off that was first triggered last week was by new U.S. data showing lower than expected job creation and higher than expected unemployment.
Conditions are softening, but they're still strong. It's just not overheating.
Today, after much stress and talk of a possible U.S. recession, a big recovery, U.S. markets surged and markets in Asia closed up double digits.
Since the 80s, there's been about a 5% drawdown about once a year. The story of this is basically bad things happen, the market goes down, and then it ultimately recovers.
While much of the world rebounded, Canada's TSX bucked that trend. After being closed yesterday for the public holiday, it closed down more than 1% Tuesday, with the prices for gold and major stocks like Shopify, Brookfield Corp, and RBC falling.
The U.S. is still the biggest economy in the world. The fact that we're so closely tied to the U.S. economy, that when the U.S. takes a hit, we follow suit typically, especially with respect to stock markets.
Financial professionals say the best way to handle these kinds of market roller coasters is to have a diversified portfolio with stocks in a wide variety of sectors. The other tip, Omar, don't try to time the market or panic sell.
All right, Annie, thank you. Still ahead, here comes the sun.
First time standing on the podium in the corner I am and hearing the national anthem and seeing the Canadian flag was pretty incredible.
All our hard work's paid off. I mean, as parents, you can't be more proud.
Summer McIntosh on home soil after a golden Olympic splash. The sensational summer of Summer McIntosh at the Paris Olympics was capped off today with a surreal homecoming. Canada's star swimmer returned home to Toronto, showcasing 3 gold medals and a silver, putting together a record-breaking performance.
I don't think it's fully sunk in yet. I wasn't expecting it necessarily, but I mean, it means the world to see everyone's support for me and Team Canada.
McIntosh says the most meaningful medal she won was in the 200-meter butterfly.
The fact that my mom swam the 200 fly back in 1984 Olympic Games, and for me to get it the gold medal in 2024 Games is pretty cool for sure.
We're so proud of Summer, how hard she's worked and all her hard work's paid off. I mean, as parents, you can't be more proud.
Next for the triple gold medalist, celebrating her 18th birthday later this month. And she deserves a big celebration. After the break, a gigantic iceberg stuck in a swirling ocean vortex. The world's largest iceberg, just north of Antarctica, has become a fascinating anomaly. Here's CTV's Sarah Plowman.
In a dance with nature, the world's largest iceberg is spinning. A chunk of ice about 2/3 the size of Prince Edward Island, trapped in a slow twirl off Antarctica, as it's been for months.
It's got stuck in this kind of stagnant column of water, which we call a Taylor column. And it's just very gently rotating there.
It split from the southernmost continent nearly 40 years ago, got stuck on a seabed for decades and began moving again, but instead of drifting north and melting like icebergs typically do, lately it's only been turning about 15 degrees each day.
And what we really don't understand is how long it's going to get stuck there.
Below the iceberg sit underwater mountains. As the Earth rotates, currents move around the seamount, and that phenomenon extends to the surface.
And so that means, in fact, the water on top of that seamount is isolated from the rest of the world ocean. And this iceberg has got stuck on that thing, and it's just going to sit there and spin for a very long time.
Onlookers are in awe of its size and also its height, about 400 meters tall.
If you look at the CN Tower, that's about how high the observation deck is.
Curious to see, much like its journey.
It got beached when no one expected it to get beached, and then it broke free, and now it's stuck in this funny little vortex that no one expected.
A slow spin, catching the world's attention. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
What a mystery. That's a snapshot of this Tuesday. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night and see you tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast. Canada's #1 newscast for excellence in journalism.
We begin tonight with breaking news.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina, winner of the Canadian Screen Award for Best National Newscast. Watch weeknights at 11.